It's good to be with you today. Welcome, welcome, one and all. Looks like we have a good crowd shown up, and I am sure that you are ready to lay out all the things that you thought of, and your comments and your questions. We're talking about the Torah of the Lord. Is there a perfect Torah? Is what I called it, based on Psalm 19:8, and I say there is. And one of the bigger questions, I'm interested in your take, not only on the class, but in your take as far as Scripture goes. Do you think that the Torah of the Lord is the Torah of Moses? Is the Torah? How do you define it? Where do you go with that? And then the other thing that really strikes me is how well do we think people were following that Torah, throughout the biblical period. So we're going to get right into this. Looks like some fun today. We've got a lot of people, so I'll bring people up. I won't cut people off if I can help it. Just get your point out, make your point, and then we'll move down and let others go as well. We've already got a hand up. Hello, Damon. Welcome. Shabbat Shalom, my friend. How are you? Let me... Can you unmute there?
Yes.
There you go. Hey, man.
So you have some interesting thoughts going on today, and I do want to start out by agreeing that there was definitely something going on before the law was given at Mount Sinai. Excellent point in Exodus 13. We can even look back at Genesis 26:5. There's some commandments going on there.
I brought that up too. Yeah.
So I want to go to Psalm 19, where you were talking, and actually look at the beginning of that psalm, because I think at least part of the answer is there.
Part of what answer? Part of what answer?
What that law is.
Oh, I got you.
So the heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament shows his handiwork. Day into day utters speech. Night to night reveals knowledge. There's no speech or language where their voice is not heard. So something is going on here that's revealed in the heavens. Let's go to Job 38. You may know where I'm going.
Wait, no, well, just real quick before we go there, you mentioned that there's something in Psalm 19 that would answer the question of which Torah of the Lord is mentioned in verse 8, and you said that there was a clue there. So it's not...
In the heavens.
Okay, in the heavens. Okay, I'll follow you. Now, Job what?
Yep. Job 38.
Okay, what's the verse?
Verse 31.
All right.
Can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades, or loose the belt of Orion? Can you bring out Mazzaroth, the constellations in their season? Can you guide Arcturus with its cubs? Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? Can you set their dominion over the earth? So I think what's going on here is we have a law which is recorded in the heavens, which is not yet set over the earth, at least not fully. And that law, Abraham knew something about, and Abraham was keeping it.
One second. We just to make sure, I want to make sure I follow, and I understand that you're dealing in interpretation, not necessarily that it says, because the word law is not used, the word Torah is not used, but just so I follow, your interpretation is that this heavenly, what you've called a law, has to do with the planets and the constellations, although it's not called a Torah in these passages at the beginning of Psalm 19 or here in Job 38. Am I following that? But it's an interpretation, right?
That's pretty close. It's an interpretation of what's written in the heavens. And it's not explained here what that interpretation is.
Right.
But I think what we're seeing is that something like that existed prior to Mount Sinai, and Abraham understood it, whatever that was.
But you would think that whatever it is, and I love, you mentioned Genesis 26. I mentioned that in the class as well. Love that passage. Whatever it is, you're suggesting that it may be this law and understanding of how the heavens operate, or something of that nature. Is that correct? Is it fair, or am I taking it too far down the wrong path?
it's not how the heavens operate per se. Um, you've probably heard about like the gospel written in the stars, that type of thing.
Mm.
Okay, so I think there is a meaning that's attributed to constellations, stars, etc., that tells us what that law is. It's not how the planets operate per se. There is a meaning behind that.
Got
And
you.
that meaning here is we're not told what that meaning is, but that meaning is, as it were, a heavenly law that just as Moses saw a pattern and made things after a pattern, I think the Mosaic law is basically made after a pattern that's seen in heaven, as it
Okay.
were.
All right. All right. I appreciate your input. And I know that uh, often we get just a few minutes to express a thought and we don't have time to flesh out the whole thing. So I understand that you've got something that you're working out here, but it's hard to convey in just a few minutes. But yeah, so one thing I want to make sure that people understand is when I go through, like I did today, and I go through 18 passages which use the phrase Torah of the Lord, I realize that there are other associations that we can make. For instance, I did that today I said, it's really tempting to associate Deuteronomy 30, where it says, this commandment, which I command you this day, is not too hard for you. It's not too difficult. It's so forth and so on. But I really want to focus on, and in my class, I only had the time to go through those passages which deal specifically with that phrase. So I appreciate you bringing in other ideas. And I do like the idea, we get this in Isaiah, where the Hebrew, I think the English says he stretched out the heavens, but there is this idea that in Hebrew it says he planted the heavens. So
Mm-hmm.
there is this connection, and it comes out not only in Christianity. People, often say, well, I understand the Christian connection, the bring the kingdom of God from heaven to earth. But that idea is really first found in Isaiah 51. I mean, plainly said, plant the heavens, so I think that those ideas where what is above, what is below, Christianity gets into it, the Qumran group got into it, mystics and Kabbalists get into it. So there is a precedent for making the connection like you suggested here, Damon. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we've hang tight. You might have something else to jump in on. If I can go to Todd, is that okay? Damon, are you good for right now?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Todd and Angel. How are you, Todd and Angel? Wait, let me see. Can you unmute? I'm just going to make you sit there for a minute and see. Did you get it?
We're unmuted.
Okay. All right. Good.
Are we live or is it Memorex?
You are live. You are live. How are y'all?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing wonderfully. Excellent.
I had when you read 2 Chronicles 31, 2-3.
Mm-hmm.
It again, there's the thing about the sacrifices, the priesthood, everything else. So what Torah is he reading?
Yeah.
I mean, is that post what Jeremiah said about the lion pen of the scribes, or is that,
Yeah.
I just have issues with that.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. But look, I get hate mail for what I think. So I'm curious. I do think that there is clearly a time when the priestly pen really goes to work. And there's two basic theories, and I'll just put these out there and then I'll be quiet. But number one theory is that they had some form of Torah all along that they're following. Now, where is that? But maybe they had the sacrificial system and it's spelled out in this Torah or whatever. There's a scroll that's discovered that seems to suggest that all of that is the lying pen, and Jeremiah is reacting to that. Or there is a discovery of a scroll and then it is edited, and Jeremiah calls foul. So Zephaniah also says that the priest did violence to the Torah, and he and Jeremiah are the prophets at the time when this scroll is found. So I'm going to get into this, God willing, this coming week. Which one is it? Is it that the scroll was corrupted and then the real one was found and there's sort of an opportunity to correct course? Or were people off doing their thing, the Torah is found, and then it's corrupted to advance Josiah's religious reform? What you think?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I can see your point there. But it's just interesting because I told her that this morning that it kind of hit me earlier this morning when I got up. I was like, it's interesting that he commands the tabernacle to be built. You put the Ark of the Covenant in there. There's this nice curtain. There's everything else, and only the priest can go in there.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, when Yeshua dies on the cross, the curtain is rent from top to bottom, and everything was open, so you could access him there. So, would he change his mind?
Mm.
Or was that maybe written in there? She's found something a couple of weeks ago on the Egyptian kings and how their tent was laid out. And you might have seen the picture yourself too, and it's laid out exactly like the tabernacle. It just kind of makes you wonder.
Where did you? I've seen some of that, Angel. What were you looking at? Do you remember?
I was watching someone on YouTube and they were like, just look it up. And so I looked it up, and it's, I think it may have been Richard
Freeman?
Yeah.
Okay.
That might have been, yeah.
It may have been.
I think that, I'm not going to guarantee that, but
right.
I'm pretty sure that's, I mean, it had the altar and everything. It was laid out, the curtains all the way around, everything. I was kind of like, well, isn't that interesting? How much more did they bring from Egypt?
Well, it's funny. So Seth and I are working with a friend to produce a couple of episodes. We're going to talk about some of the very things that you described. And we had a little discussion the other day. We were just talking about various aspects of his research. And one of the things that he's really bringing up is this connection with Egypt. Just like you found, Angel, there is a lot of overlap. And I won't go into a lot of details. I don't want to steal my buddy's thunder. But like you said, Angel, look it up, because whenever you recognize that when Carter and the boys broke into Tut's tomb, they found some really interesting things which look a whole lot like what we find in some of the elements of the tabernacle and so forth. So, you have to think, if the children of Israel are present in Egypt, there is you would expect to see some overlap, and we do see some overlap. For instance, there are 13 names, and only 13 names in the Pentateuch which are Egyptian. And all 13 of those names which are Egyptian are Levite. There's not a single exception. So the priests, or the Levites, tend to bear some overlap with what we see in Egypt. I don't know where I got this idea. Maybe it was as a little boy growing up and loving the Bible and reading stories like David saying, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine?" I got the idea that only the Israelites were circumcised in the flesh, right? And so I just had this idea, but that's not true at all. Egyptians were sacrificing, and they even put drawings of it, hide your kids' eyes, on the walls of some of their buildings. So circumcision is not. So what do we really take away from this? Is there a connection between what we find in Israelite religion and ancient, say, Egyptian religion? Do we find certain elements of Persian religion in the later books? Yes, we do. Any Babylonian influence? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when your heroes, when Moses and these other 12 names, some of you have followed my classes to know those names, but when you realize that those are really Egyptian names and not Hebrew names, makes you wonder. And they're all Levites?
Yeah.
Man.
Good point.
Well,
Yeah.
was there anything in what you saw, Angel, that really kind of blew you away, or was it just all very fascinating and I'm putting you on the spot kind of thing?
Well, it's all fascinating. I mean, they had things that looked like the breastplates that the priests wore, and they had the seats, or fringes on their garments. I mean, there's a lot of things that are very similar to what the Hebrews did in the wilderness.
Good deal. Interesting.
Mm.
All right. What else, guys? Are you going to hang tight and come back with another good comment here in a little while? You want me to roll
I'm sure we will. I got some notes written down.
Okay, well, good. Let me, before I call up our next speaker, let me say from YouTube just a couple of the points I'm trying to monitor, and I've been told to do a better job of that. Dolores, hey, Dolores. Dolores has been watching with us for a while. She's always got good insight. Dolores says, read the book, The Witness in the Stars. Goes with this idea, and I think she's commenting on Damon's commentary just a little while ago where he tied in Job 38 and the first part of Psalm 19 and this idea that there could be a connection between the ancients and their understanding of the heavens and so forth. So she says, The Witness in the Stars. Tracy Osborne says, Dead Sea Scroll Book of Hymns 1:5 through 39, all things were recording before thee in a recorded script. This concept is throughout Jubilees. If you haven't read the book of Jubilees, I highly recommend it. And by the way, if you don't have the Dead Sea Scrolls, at least the latest copy by Geza Vermish, let's see if I can reach it. Oh, I sure can reach it. But I have this on my website listed, the link, so you don't get the wrong one. But it's the complete Dead Sea Scrolls in English. Now, this is not the biblical text. They're in other books. You have to get other books to get all of them. But this is what we might call the sectarian books. Okay. Jeffrey, are you letting people into the live stream? Jeffrey, what we do is we send out a newsletter every week, and hopefully you will forgive the security measure. But what we typically do is we let people know if you just found us. I'm not saying you did, but if you just found us, sign up on rossknichols.com for our newsletter, and you'll get that link every week. But just for security, we let people in that we know. But we have this YouTube section, and as you see, I try to monitor the chat there too. All right, let's see. If you want to find out what the Torah was, you need to figure out why Enoch was considered righteous in the eyes of Yod-Heh Vav-Heh, says Jeffrey. And I think we have looked at that, so good point. Barbara, Jeffrey, on the YouTube, we can only listen. The link in Zoom where you're enabled to speak is in the newsletter. There you go. One more point by Dolores. Aaron Lipkin, who is also a friend of mine. Aaron Lipkin has a talk called Walk Like an Egyptian, tells artifacts, names, and customs in the Torah that are copied. So, Dolores, if you get a chance, either post the link there or post it in our Discord channel, because that I have not seen, and I would love to see it. Dolores often sends me links where she's like me and many of you. She's digging into all sorts of cool stuff. So, all right. How about let's bring up my friend Sue. Sue, how are you? You'll have to unmute. There we go.
Let me unmute.
I got you.
Can you hear me now?
I got you.
Okay, good. It wouldn't let me unmute at
Well,
first.
I think Seth and I are both trying to unmute you, and I think he unmuted you, and then I muted you. I don't know. Anyway,
Okay,
you're here.
Well, at the beginning of the Zoom call, you asked us to state what we think is the true Torah. And I wanted to answer that question. I appreciated what Damon brought up because I think Abraham was a genuine truth seeker. Jeremiah, well, quite a few statements in the scripture tell us that when you shall seek me, you will find me when you search for me with all your heart. And I believe Abraham was one of those truth seekers who sought Hashem with all his heart, and Hashem responded and gave him his instruction, which he faithfully followed thereafter. But they did go into captivity, and people are people. And I think a lot of that teaching was lost, which then we come to Moshe. And of course, Moshe was a truth seeker. He knew he'd really blown it. And Hashem answered his cry for truth and restored that truth to his people. And at this point in my walk, I believe that what we call the Moses scroll that was brought to public view by Moses Shapira, I believe that's the closest we have to the Torah of Moshe. I love it, and I'm doing my best to live by it. And I thought what you brought up later about that lying pen of the scribes, when did it get corrupted? And from what I can tell, it got corrupted all the way along.
Yeah.
From day one.
Right.
And I can't help but believe that when they got a hold of the Torah Be'ad Moshe, they messed with that one as well.
Yeah.
Which is such a shame. And that's why I'm so grateful that the Moses scroll has been brought back into the limelight. So thank you so much. This was a wonderful class. I'm going to have to go back and look carefully at all the scriptures that you brought up. I couldn't keep up with you.
Well, we did cover quite a few, and that's a good point. And just as a reminder, I've just been swamped. My communication and response and correspondence hasn't been what I like it to be. So please, anyone who's reached out or sent me a note on Discord or Facebook or email or text message, or however you contact me, please continue to be gracious. We're working to get our feet back on our ground, but I want to remind people that our good friend Baruch, as he's nicknamed, John Perry, comes behind and publishes every week the commentary and scriptures that I go through during the class. So you'll actually be able to have a printout of that, and he posts those in various places. So, but anyway, yeah, I sometimes I have the advantage of I have the notes in front of me, and we've added a couple of other things, like where Seth puts the verse on the screen, but there was a lot of passages that we went through this morning, so I fully understand trying to keep up. So,
well, thank you for a wonderful class. Really appreciate
thank you for listening in. I appreciate you. All right. Miriam, my sister Miriam, how are you? I'm going to ask you to unmute. I'm ready.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. How are you, my friend?
Great. Well, I'm glad to be here. Discord don't like me. I said it last week. I'll say it again. Okay. But thanks to great people like Clody and Online Patrick, they got me back.
Yep.
Okay, because I couldn't do it. I tried for a week, and Clody sent me a link this morning, and okay, because that's our Thursday night class.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, and I don't want to miss nothing. This is all I have.
Hey,
all right.
I'm glad you're with us, and I'm glad that Clody helped you get back in.
Woo! But you brought us to many scriptures, and then Isaiah 30, it talks about how they turned away from the Torah, the law. Okay, yeah. Amos, the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then in 2 Chronicles 12, I didn't realize David's sons turned away as well. Okay,
Yep.
And then Jeremiah 8, the lying scribes of the pen.
Yep.
Who caused all that? I mean, it had to be a causation somehow. Nevertheless, it brings me to the understanding of today. What makes sense with preachers' kids, they turn away.
That's true.
You know, and I'm just trying to understand that and what caused it, you know, why is it was so rejected?
You bring up a good point. Preachers' kids, when you said that, I thought back growing up in church, and some of the sketchiest times in my life was with the preacher's kids. So I know all about that. I almost said some of the most fun I ever had, but you people are holy. You wouldn't understand running wild in your youth. So, but no, it really is very interesting as we read through these various texts. Those to whom much is given, much is required. But what we see is quite often those who are given the choice make the wrong choice. And I think it's so important as we work through, particularly Deuteronomy, you get the idea of a choice. I put before you this day life and blessing, death and cursing. Choose life. So the option, the choice is clear. But what we find is that more often than not, the wrong decision is made. People choose to follow that which does not bring life. I'm reminded there is a way that seems right to man, but the end thereof is destruction. So anyway, it's really a matter of choice, and people make the wrong choice. By the way, Karen just says, Karen Clark oh no, that's Karen. I'm sorry, different Karen. It says preacher kids for family and friends lead to interesting moments. But Karen, who is a preacher's kid, I could have figured that. She says, I resemble that remark. So, no, but Miriam, you're right. When we work through these texts, there are so many texts that let us know that that the wrong choice was made. People just don't follow the Torah. And I think one of my main takeaways over the last few years, where I've spent much more time reading from the Hebrew and looking at these texts and being as honest as I can with the text. I pulled off my fundamentalist glasses in 2017. And I said, I'm going to read these texts. I've read them for years and years and years and taught the Bible. But when I pulled those fundamentalist glasses off and quit making assumptions, I think that it changed everything for me. And I began to see the truth. But again, a lot of people are afraid to do that, and they approach the Bible with the answers in their hand. They already know what they want to make the text say, and then they build their stories around it. And I quit doing that about, 7 years ago. So
I just want to say, I'm just so thankful this opportunity, because it is life changing. We talked about it. I mean, it's life to us.
Yeah.
And how can one reject life and not receive it? And so many of us are from Christianity.
Yeah.
And yet we ascribe and we want, and I'm just mind blown on Yahweh and his awesomeness, and how he is so loving and so compassionate to invite.
Yeah.
Even and I know I wasn't great in Christianity and the world, and I'm just so thankful to be here, and that's all I got to say.
Well, I'm thankful that you're here, and I'm thankful that our friends helped you get back into the Discord, and you're with us, and I appreciate everything you do for us. So Thank you, and I will bring in our next speaker right after this commercial break. No, I'm joking. No commercials. But let me look at the YouTube and make sure I'm not missing anything. So I mentioned to Jeffrey about our security, and he said he agreed. And then Dave Tyler told him a little bit more about how we got hacked in Zoom. Some very, very bad people put some very, very bad things on the screen. So we've had to tighten that up a little bit. All right. So a couple more things. Let's see. And people are helping. Okay. Tracy Osborne says Judges 2:10 describes the apostasy of Israel after the generation of Joshua. And that's true. We see very early that people got off. So that's the thing. And then let me see. I think I saw a title. Okay, Tracy says that Aaron Lipkin's class that was referenced earlier is Walk Like an Egyptian. So there you go. So look that up. Now, let's see. Let me unmute Karen, the preacher's kid, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
I know you type.
Hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
How you doing, Karen?
Good. I just want to comment to the, you know what, in the biblical text, it talks about writing his matters on our hearts.
Yep.
I'm going to put them in your hearts. And I think that a lot of us in modern times have this preconceived notion that ancient man was some kind of child sacrificing barbarian with zero moral code.
Yeah.
And I think that is maybe a little incorrect. I know if you look at some of them were,
yeah,
but if you look at a lot of the cultures, they're I don't know if I'd necessarily call them moral, but they have a set of rules that they expect their citizens to abide by. They're not going around slaughtering everyone.
Right.
And even Persians, when they come into Canaan, they try to stop them from doing child sacrifice.
Yeah.
And even but they still continue. I think Jono posted a article a while ago about the Tophet.
Yeah,
and
Jeremiah.
There's a reference to something in Sardinia, which was a Phoenician. They had a Phoenician settlement.
Yeah.
And they were still continuing to do that there. And the Romans, when they came in, they had to make it illegal.
Right.
Like, you're not going to do this anymore. You're going to stop it. So that, not all cultures are evil like that.
Yep.
Some of them are a little more moral, and it's kind of like there's yin and the yang. There's a little bit of good in every evil person. There's a little bit of evil in every good person.
Yeah.
And it just depends on what you let grow.
They say whichever man has two, what is the old Indian saying? You've got two wolves, and it depends on which one you feed or something. Is that right? Something like that.
And I think, it's always been like that.
Yeah.
And that's part of, some kind of inherent moral code that we do have and that we've always had.
Yeah. I like that idea. And let me add one point to it. And I think the biblical writers a lot of times are people of their time. So you're going to get some of the prejudices, if you will. You're going to get some of the point and make fun of your neighbors, but at the same time, that's going to come out in the text. But we also get a different picture that shows up from time to time. We get the neighbors who are really good people, and the biblical writers tell us that. You think of Rahab. The biblical writers want to say, okay, let's say I have a prostitute, and everybody says, oh, bad, she's a bad girl. And then the writer says, hold on, let me finish my story. Don't jump ahead of me. Let me finish. This woman, Rahab, who happened to be a harlot, was such a good person. And, and it really starts to build this. And then you get the story where in the days of Elijah and this Syrophoenician woman, she's not an Israelite, but she is someone who takes care of the prophet. And so we want those examples. And you think of in 2 Kings 5, the commander of the army. So the biblical writers tell us this. Now, although a lot of these texts would say everybody in Jericho is bad, 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 bad. And then you go, well, wait, hang on, except there's this good woman and all her family. And so I think in my view, one of the most powerful messages in the biblical text is often right below the surface of the story. So like if you read the story of the Exodus, you might say, you know what? Those dadgum Egyptians, that they're just, they deserve everything they got. But not every family in Egypt, you have to understand that. In fact, Isaiah 19 is a classic example of be careful. Let's not form our enemy list based on, you got to read the whole story, because ultimately you've got other people who are dedicated to loving God. And anyway, so I agree with you. I think we tend to form our opinions that all of these ancient people, except the good guys in the story, except Israel, they're all these idolatrous, throwing their young virgins into the volcano kind of people, and that's just not the case.
Right.
Good stuff.
That's where I was going with that.
Good stuff. What else, Karen? What else you got for us?
I don't know. I don't know.
You never did anything wrong as a preacher's kid, did you?
No, it was so good.
Yeah, I bet. All right, I believe you. We'll leave it at that.
All right.
God bless you for your saintliness.
Thanks. That's what I call myself, Karen.
Huh?
I should make that my profile name, Saint Karen.
Saint Karen. I think you should. Do it right now. All right. Eric. Eric Davies. How are you, Eric? Shabbat Shalom.
Testing.
You got it?
Shabbat Shalom. How's my signal?
Hey, it's perfect.
Hey,
I hear you.
Yeah, I walked up the drive a little bit, and it seemed to help.
That's all right. You got to stand on. You live in
my only point.
Go ahead. I was just going to say you have to stand on one foot outside under the stars. I get it.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyways, the point of the Torah and the designation for law, I think we're getting law from almost the I think there's a word that's been made no and Torah thing, and of course the New Testament authors it was Greek.
Sorry, Eric. Sorry, Eric. Now you're garbled, Eric. Sorry.
Okay, hold on. The distinction between law, nomos, and Torah, as in the New Testament authors were reading the Septuagint, right?
Yep.
And I think it's just a worthy distinction to be made. And there's, I'm just going off of what you've been, Torah, Yarash, or Yara, direction, instruction versus law, which I think the GPS authors, it was hukat that was translated law there in Genesis 26:5, right? So I don't know if you speak on that, and that's all.
Very good. Very good. Eric, I think I got enough of it I can pick up. I appreciate your commentary. What Eric is bringing up is that we often have different words that are translated. We have different words that are translated law, if you will. And so we have to look at the Hebrew and see. So a couple of points. One he's making is that there is some confusion because quite often where the New Testament, for instance, or the Septuagint might be using the phrase nomos, which may or may not be the equivalent of the Hebrew Torah. Depends on which verse you're looking at. So you have to go back and look at that. Now, one thing that I will say is that I know he mentioned Genesis 26. In Genesis 26, there are several words that are used. In other words, Abraham, because it's talking to Isaac, Abraham did this, and he followed this, and Torah is in there. The Hebrew Torah is mentioned among those things. But the question becomes, is that, Genesis 26:5, is that when it says that he followed God's Torah, does it mean he packed around a Chumash like Genesis 1:1 through Deuteronomy 34:12? Well, clearly not. Was it something more like Damon described? That's up for discussion. What was it? And it clearly was not what people now claim is the Torah. So all those things are important. And then Eric also mentioned the word chuchat. Chuchat is typically translated as a statute. For instance, in Numbers chapter 19, where it's talking about the red heifer, that is an example of a chuchat, a statute, or a chok. Anyway, so good stuff. I appreciate the input. And Eric, you're a great writer. So even though your internet is not so strong, if you have an opportunity to write up maybe better than I articulated what you were trying to say, please write up that distinction maybe and post it on the Discord, and that way others can get Eric's thoughts and not maybe the partial thing that I tried to convey. Is that fair? All right. I appreciate you, Eric. And I will now bring up Clody. Hey, Clody. How are you?
I don't need to unmute myself.
I did it.
Good.
I did it.
Yes. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'm good. I think I enjoyed your class very much today. Thank you.
Good.
And I'm enjoying even the after class. I had some thoughts.
Okay.
As you were giving the class today, I was thinking that if we had those stone tablets, this wouldn't be a question at all. Because it's another thing to have things that are written on pen, on paper with pen, and it's another thing to have two tablets of stone. How do you say the written on stone?
Yeah.
It's written on stone. It's not written on sand. It's not written on paper. It's not written on leather.
Right.
So it makes a big distinction. So I think that I would have posed another question. Is the Torah of God, is the law of God, the 613 or whatever, however many there are, those 613 regulations or 10 regulations, 10 laws? I think that this would be a good question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it has in it, this question, the answer. I don't know if you can allow me to answer this question that I posed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So I think that if you see those 10 commandments or matters or words paralleling those 613 rules and regulations, you can see and you can start to really think for yourself and to use your logic, because I don't think that honoring your father and mother is the same as boiling a sheep or roasting a sheep. I don't think that that's such a big deal and such an important case.
Okay.
So you can use that kind of scale to measure which is real and which is important and which is the true Torah of God. I think that we have throughout the whole Bible the words of the prophets that say to us that God told us through them that he does not need sacrifices. He does not need a temple. So we understand throughout the whole scriptures that we have what is important and what is not important. And so I think that's at least on my eyes, it's a very discerned matter. You can understand what is important and what is not important, and what is whole, completed, and what is not whole and completed, but they change and they add and they use something else, and they we can do the Pesach not with a sacrifice, but we can do it symbolically now. So how is that the same? And while the 10 rules, it matters, are, if we had them like in stone, this wouldn't be a question at all. We would have known. And also I wanted to make another link to another question, which is, I was talking to an atheist person that I know, and he was making such a preaching out of the moral code that is within us, and we have my English.
Your English is good.
No, it's not. Sometimes I lose the right conscience.
Okay.
I lose the right word. So he was telling me that we have moral code inside of us, we have conscience, and we have logic, so we don't need the 10 rules. And I was like, how can somebody live without laws? And he told me, if you we have a golden rule, he told me, and that is, don't do to others what you don't want the others do to you. But that in itself, that's another question, because you can so we, at least I decided that I will go with the 10 rules as opposed to the 613 rules and regulations. And now I have another question, one golden rule against these 10 commandments. So I again have some arguments against that golden rule, because people's boundaries are different. Some people can take a lot and some people cannot take. So if I am an empathetic person that I can take a lot, then I think that you take a lot on you also, but then I do something bad for your boundaries because you're a little bit more rigid.
Yeah.
So that's not something that's not a golden rule. Also, in this, starting from these different boundaries that people have, we begin to have that distinction of strong people and weak people, and also of narcissists and of empaths. So I don't think that that's a good rule to live by. Also, if we have at least two, but I will say one example, Shabbat rule can't be is not in the golden rule. It doesn't have anything to do with I don't want you to do to me what I don't want to do to you.
Right.
So yeah, so Shabbat can't be a golden rule. Just a second, because I was writing.
No, that's good. You're doing good.
But yeah, Shabbat cannot be included to this golden rule, and also it can. Also, I don't believe that a perfect moral code can be found in people's hearts, at least not today, because some people's needs are distorted, are defected, are damaged. That means that we need a perfect set of rules that cures the sick in heart and mind, and a perfect set of rules that corrects the imperfections of the damaged world and families we come from. So if we want, I love how psychiatry and psychology is doing things to make us get out of the trauma of childhood or of memories and so on. But if we simplify this, and at least I lived it in my core, if we go by the 10 commandments or 10 words or 10 matters, then you don't need psychiatrists, psychologists. I mean, for the regular damaged persons, because I'm not talking about clinically problematic person.
Sure.
So that is how I was, as you were discussing and you were giving the class, I was all on this train of thoughts. I had a parallel thinking, and I was like, oh, we need this. We really need this class. Thank you.
No, I love it. I don't want to cut you off. You're doing extremely well, making some point. Okay, well, good. I think that you're onto something really big. If you years ago when I started thinking that the 10 Commandments, I'm going back decades, I began to think that was the most important, because as you read it in Exodus 20, Deuteronomy 5, Exodus 34, Deuteronomy 10, you read that these are written with God's finger. These are these words, not don't boil a kid in its mother's milk and, all these other things. Look, you can say those are important things too, but I'm like you. I see that there are the commandments that God could have said anything on that day, from the mountain, from the midst of the fire to the assembled group. He could have said anything, but he chose these 10. So I remember bringing this up in a context with both Jews and non-Jews, and, it was at a conference, and I was told the typical answer is, and it was a good conversation, but the conversation was really about, well, all the commandments are equal, and there's none that are more important than the others. And how do you know that by keeping the one about the boiling a kid, you don't know what the score is? So maybe God says, well, that was the most, ding, 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 you just did the most important commandment, you get 500 points or whatever. I don't think that's the case. I think the most important ones are the 10 words. Now, what happened in the Second Temple period is that the emerging, and I'm going to use the word Christian movement, but they weren't called Christians. Others may have called them Christians, but I'm talking about that Jewish movement that diverted from Pharisaism and so forth and followed the teaching of Yeshua, whatever that looked like at the time. We have ideas. Some of you have more and probably better ideas than I do. But as that movement broke away, they kept some very important things, one of which is the idea that the 10 words are central. We see it in the teachings. We see it in the New Testament text. We see it in the New Testament literature, the early Christian literature. Well, because they focused on those 10, what happens is that standard forms, if I can say it that way, other forms of Judaism said, we're not going to do this anymore as part of our service because the Menim, the heretics, they've made that the most important thing. And so we're not going to read those in our service because then people will get the idea that these are more important. And so it's like, have you heard the English expression, to take your nose off to spite your face? It's like it's crazy. Why would you? No,
I can understand the expression.
So I think we have to get with the idea of
hurting yourself, just to not agree with your opposition.
That's right. That's, as we say, I am so determined to be different than that group, then I will hurt myself to make it happen. And whenever I talk about, and we tend, most of us who've studied a while, talk about the 613, just so people know, I didn't know until I really dug into that. If you look at, say, Maimonides and others who've really pushed the idea of the 613, it's not like I thought they went through the Hebrew Bible and counted. Like, okay, be fruitful and multiply. That's number one. Then you work your way through. But it's not really that at all. It's a it's an enumeration, a numbering of the way that these commandments are to be presented, but it's not like we think it is. So I don't know if we counted how many commands are actually in the Bible, commands, like and I'm using the term generically, there might be a lot more than that. There might not be as many as that. I don't know because I've not done it. But often if we think of the 10, I think you said the matters, the words, the 10 words, it's more than 10. I mean, they're 10, but within them you have, more commandments than 10. But I'm like you. I think that this is the foundation. If we had these 10, what would that, I mean, can you imagine discovering the box, which I don't think is the big golden box with the golden angels that's described by later priestly literature? I'm looking for something else. I think that maybe Second Maccabees describes it. Who knows? Maybe we should take an expedition and go search for in those caves of Jordan. Who knows? Maybe get some good boots and make sure your passport's up to date. That might be kind of fun to trek the hills.
So I'm sorry. Can I do?
Please.
Just a brief thing. I think that perfect set of rules would be so perfect that would give peace even to the most hated enemies. I loved your debate with Wesab, by the way. Thank you very much about that. And I think that we have to see the law of God in that light, in the light that we can live with each other and make this earth a paradise.
Amen. I want to, first of all, thank you for saying that about the interview that we did. I really like this guy. He's young. He seems brilliant. He's kind. He's generous. And he wrote me sometime back and said, he was very respectful. I mean, I get it. I'm an older guy, white hair, white beard. He's young. He's in his 30s. So he's very respectful. He wrote me this kind letter and, dear Mr. Ross Nichols, would you please consider coming on my channel? It's pretty clear he's a Muslim. And so I go and look at his channel and I read the introduction, Clody, and it just hit me. It was so well put. He basically says, and by the way, his YouTube channel is called Beyond Doubt Theology. And so he wrote to me and said, please come on my channel. I'd love to talk to you about the Moses Scroll. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he had read the book. He was intrigued by the nature of this Moses Scroll because Islam has a tradition too about the law of Moses and how it was corrupted. And many Muslim scholars have read the Hebrew Bible too, and they've read Jeremiah 8:8. And anyway,
especially Tanakh, especially.
Yes, yeah. So anyway, saying all that, when I talked to him on the phone and realized that as a young guy, as young as he is, he loves the Bible. He is a kind guy. He's read and learned Greek. He's evidently pretty good at biblical Greek. And so I think that interview was not the last we'll see of that relationship.
Amen.
Seth has already started a dialogue with him too. Seth is about his age. So Seth even designed a thumbnail for the video and has offered to help him a little bit. But what would the world be if we approach things like I know it all and I've got it all figured out and just come and learn with me? And, if I didn't allow other people to express their opinions, we're never going to get there. The world should be done with people that know it all. In fact, I don't dislike very many people, but I get closest to disliking those who come across as know-it-alls, And it's not because I think they're bad. It's just that if we can all take a deep breath and work together and study together and try to meet on common ground, I think we're going to get much further along. I love what we're doing here because your insights, all of you, your insights are what help us to really understand, I think, more. Because if you look at me, let's say I've studied for 35 years. Okay, I probably learned something in 35 years. But if you've studied you're younger than me, but if you've studied for 25 or 20, and then someone else says, well, I studied for 40, and you start adding that up, our collective understanding, we're going to be
different points of view.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what we have to do. And I always appreciate your input. And so, did you have other good points for us, Clody, or is that it for right now?
Perhaps I might have, but I'm gonna let Michael for the moment.
All right.
Thank you
Look,
very much.
I like the sunlight, man. It looks like a beautiful day there. Looks like it's nice.
It's not. It's not. It's only the filter of whatever phone I have.
Okay. All right.
Not.
Okay. All right. Well,
Okay.
enjoy it anyway. All right.
Thank you.
And Michael, I am going to unmute you. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Oh, Shabbat Shalom, Ross, and everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
I just wanted to, it jogged my memory. It's just something I ran across this week, and Karen, it relates to what Karen brought up about other groups of people when they're morality. And one of the most eye-opening, I think, and accusative things, it's in Prophet Jeremiah. I stumbled across it this week. I'm not one of those people that spits out scripture. I stumbled across it this week. And it's the Prophet Jeremiah, and the Most Holy One actually says to Jeremiah, and he's referring to, I believe it's the Rechabites, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably so.
This group of people who lived in Israel because they were permitted, because they never stayed very long, because they were forbidden by their patriarch to drink wine. So they never stayed long enough to grow a vineyard. And Most Holy One says to Jeremiah, if only my people would keep and I'm paraphrasing. If only my people would keep my commandments like these Rechabites do. He is just lamenting the fact that they do not do that. And that's thanks to you, because you have really opened my eyes about a lot of things in Prophet Jeremiah. Go ahead.
I was just going to jump in. Thanks for bringing that up, Michael. That, for those of you who are listening to Michael talk about the Rechabites, that's Jeremiah 35, and it really is as important as Michael is suggesting, that this group of people is singled out. And you're right. God is telling Jeremiah, this is an example of holiness and righteousness and obedience. Yeah. Good point.
He really wishes his people would do as well as the Rechabites.
Yeah.
And just one more quick thing. Earlier you mentioned that book having to do with the stars, and I can't remember. I have it, but I'm not one of those people that can really, I'm not an astronomy buff.
I got you.
But it basically, I think in that book, if you're not in that book, it's the person who pointed me to get that book for its information on the stars. It's he stated that the handiwork of God, the skies, the stars, were God's Rembrandt.
Right.
And the zodiac is devil's graffiti written upon it to make it difficult to read.
Mm-hmm.
But I always wonder if one of the reasons, and I guess we'll never know this for sure, but one of the reasons Abraham was called out of Ur is because he was obviously, all those people there were known for their understanding of the stars. And maybe he had other qualifications. Maybe that was not one of them, but it definitely didn't hurt anything that he already knew how to read God's handiwork in the stars.
Good points.
That's all I really got.
Hey, I appreciate you, Michael. That was good. And I'm glad you brought in Jeremiah 35 and the Rechabites. It kind of goes back to what Karen was saying, about these other ancient peoples. And, we tend to maybe overlook the idea of who is and who isn't on the good side, who is it and who is not on the righteous side. And as often as we find examples within the Bible, quite often those examples are from the other nations. I think that should be striking, that the Hebrew people, when they record who is it that's righteous, well, I'll give you a couple of examples. Have you ever heard of Rahab? You mean the harlot from Jericho? Yeah. Well, that's the one that is brought up. And what about this Syro-Phoenician woman? And what about, the examples are quite often outside. And for those friends of mine who are listening now, who are Christians or Hebrew roots or followers of Yeshua, however you would define yourself without my words, there is some of the same language in the Christian writings. In fact, Yeshua would be very condemning of the religious leaders in particular of his day, and he would say things like, he would remind them of the stories I'm telling. Like, there was, in the days of Elijah, there's one woman that was considered, and it's a Syro-Phoenician woman. He say, don't get this idea that because you are genetically a descendant of this group of people that you're declared holy. Let's think that it might involve more than that. So, good example, the Rechabites, and I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you very much for that, Michael.
You're welcome, Ross. Thank you for all you do.
Hey, have a beautiful day, Michael, and I'm going to pull Damon back up. Damon, you should be good to go now.
Yes, and sorry here, I've got my video off because I actually have a power outage, so I had to move into my car to get power here. Anyway, wanted to comment on something that Claudia was saying, because I thought she raised an excellent point that, a lot of these things where you're dealing with issues of boundaries are not spelled out in the law itself. So I think in the Old Testament, not only were prophets there to basically foretell what was to come and to call people to account for not doing what God commanded, I think that they were also established to basically work through some of these issues. You can look at the Didache in the first century, and they've got these itinerant prophets going around, and what are they doing? Are they foretelling things to people? I don't think so. I think what they're basically doing is they're helping to work through some of these boundary issues and personal issues and showing people how to live that perfect way. In Ephesians 4, it talks about, let me just go ahead and pull it up. Okay, my computer's a little slow here. Okay, so he gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, some teachers, for the equipping of the saints for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ, till we all come to the unity of the faith, to the knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man that is blameless, upright. There's that idea of perfection and completion again. That we should no longer be children, tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine, speaking the truth in love. And I think the whole point there that it's making is that it takes all of these things working in concert to bring that unity, to bring that love, not just this idea of law or basically religion from on high telling you this is what you must do. But it's like you've got this, if you want to look at it from like a governmental point perspective, you have a separation of powers. You've got the judicial aspect, you've got the legislative aspect, you've also got this prophetic aspect that's helping to balance things out. So I think that's part of the picture there. It's not just, okay, let's find this perfect law, but this perfect way, which involves guidance by prophets.
Okay.
So,
good points. All right. I appreciate it. Hopefully your power comes back on. Are you having storms there? Or?
No, it's an area where there's a lot of wind, and I think something got knocked out. I wanted to bring up. You had in the class you had brought up 1 Chronicles 16, and we're going through the song there. And one of the things you pointed out was verse 35. Okay, gather us together. And made the point. Okay, well maybe that's not written in the time of King David.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not sure that that's the case. I think it may have been written in the time of King David.
How's that?
And let me just go through why I think that.
Yeah.
If you go to Psalm 2 and you look at what's going on in Psalm 2, you've got the kings of the earth, the Gentiles, setting themselves together. The anointed there is not Jesus, it's David. Okay. And
wait,
David is...
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, you said that matter of fact, but your interpretation, I always like to say, because it doesn't say we're talking about David. It doesn't say we're talking about Jesus, obviously, but anyway, go ahead.
So then let me just quickly establish that this was written at a historical time period long before Jesus. If we want to set this at some point in history, when does it make the most historical sense? Well, I've set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. Well, when did he do that? What nations were angry about that and attacking Israel at that time? I think that makes the most historical sense in the time of King David. So
just one second. Let me just jump in. Just I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to say I get where you're going, but Psalm 2 is not just because it mentions the word nations. See, I'm not reacting in 1 Chronicles 16 verse 35 to the fact that it says nations. In other words, I see nations all over the place. I'm reacting, and all scholars that I know who read that understanding, if we look at 1 Chronicles 16, we look at it as an edited text, as something which is written anachronistically. It doesn't just mention other nations. It says, save us from the nations. Right? There's a big difference in saying save us from the nations than just mentioning. So I just want to make sure you understood what I was saying. And
absolutely.
And the other point about 1 Chronicles 16, which shows signs of editing, is that we're clearly dealing with text which the writer is putting in the time of David, that if you look at the Psalms, if you go to the Psalms and you actually read them, there is a conflict there. It's a heavy tension. They're not songs attributed to Asaph in the beginning anyway. So those I just wanted to clarify, my point is not that, like when I read Psalm 2, I'm based on you calling me to Psalm 2 to address something I said about 1 Chronicles 16. Just so you know, when I read Psalm 2, I'm not suggesting that Psalm 2 is written post-exilic, you see.
Right.
So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't my inability to convey something clearly.
No.
Okay.
Totally understand where you're going.
Okay.
So the other thing it mentions in 1 Chronicles 16, which you were leading to, it does say save us, but the whole point of having a king in the first place was to save them from their enemies. Gather us together and deliver us from the Gentiles. So I wanted to go and look at Genesis 49, because I think that's a reference back there. Genesis 49, first verse. Jacob called his sons and said, gather together that I might tell you what will befall you in the last days. Gather together and hear, you sons of Jacob. I think this idea of gathering together is establishing a nation in security. I don't think that it's necessarily pointing to post-exilic. It could be.
Yeah.
But I think what 1 Chronicles 16 is actually referring back to is this in Genesis 49. So I just wanted to bring that out, that's a possibility.
Okay. All right. And I see that you're picking up on just the use of the phrase to gather. And in fact, if you look at Genesis 49, what most people do there is they say, all right, we've got Jacob, and he says, gather together, and, I'm going to tell you what will befall you, akarit hayamim, in the latter days. The Hebrew is used. Most people who tend towards an interpretation, they look at that and they say, oh, so these are prophetic utterances, and so maybe that would be an interesting connection. So anyway, I get where you're going with it. I still maintain, and this is what I love these discussions for, is because people can bring their views, and, I'm not just going to say, well, let me tell you where you're wrong, Damon. I appreciate your input. I do maintain that this is written in a much later time, and it's anachronistically, it's looking at the time of David, and we see especially when we compare Chronicles with other books which contain some of the similar stories, we do see differences, and I know you notice those as well. There have been very good fundamentalist apologetic approaches to these, which don't look at it quite the way I do. So I do welcome those challenges. So,
yes. One additional thing with Genesis 49, the whole idea of gathering together. We can look at Isaiah 11, because I think that sheds some light here.
Yeah.
So we have that's coming out of the stump of Jesse, but in verse 10 we also have a root of Jesse.
Yeah.
I think we're dealing with a family tree here.
Sure.
So Jesse is part of that family tree.
Yeah.
Who's an ancestor of Jesse that might be referring to? I think that's referring to Israel, the patriarch Jacob.
Yeah.
Because what's going on? He's saying, gather together. And what's going on here in verses 10 onward, what's he doing? He's gathering together.
Yeah,
so,
I've taught for years that what we have in Isaiah 11 is quite interesting. And again, anytime you take a Hebrew word and you go, I'm going to look at every occurrence of Kof Beit Sadi, which is what we're doing here with you going through these verses. And I've also pointed out the connection between Genesis 49 and Isaiah 11, if you work specifically 10, 11, and so forth. But what we have, you have to look at, this is my view, let me say it this way, the way I view this differently, I don't see this as pointing to someone writing in the time of David. I don't see a person in the time of David in Jerusalem, let's say, saying, deliver us, O God, our deliverer, and gather us and save us from the nations to acclaim your holy name, to glory in your praise. To me, that is written in a time when someone would need delivering. Now, is it to say that someone who is in a time that doesn't need deliverance can speak of a time when the children of Israel will need deliverance, Isaiah chapter 11? Of course, but I see the voice is different. So that's the only thing I'm drawing out. So, but I encourage people to look at these and look up every occurrence of the word gather and see, is there something we might be missing here? So there's a lot in these particular prophecies that's worthy of our time. But what we do know is that Chronicles, and most would agree with that. I say most people would agree that Chronicles is written at a much later point. So it's incorporating early material and editing that early material to reflect the view of the writer. At least that's my view. So, but good stuff.
Okay.
Good stuff. Hey, again, hopefully your power comes back on.
Probably in another 4 hours or so.
Oh, man. Hopefully not. Okay. Thank you very much, Damon. I appreciate you. Todd and Angel, come on back up here. Let me unmute you.
You're unmuted.
So come on down.
Come on down.
I'm going to change it up a little bit.
All right.
With some of the notes I was taking earlier in your class. When you read Psalms 37:31, the teaching of his God and his heart, his feet do not slip. And as soon as you read that, I got to thinking of what Yeshua did to Peter when he washed his feet. And unfortunately, that's something the church doesn't understand, because I've heard so many different versions of that story, and they apparently don't get it. He was washing the disciples' feet to keep them clean on the path, so they don't veer off the path. And when it says that my feet do not slip, I just found that to be interesting, that there's a connection there.
Okay.
By keeping commandments. Another lighter note, in Psalms 119, each one of them starts with a letter from the alphabet.
Yeah.
And another interesting story from the church we were at, about the pastor, he had no clue that's what that was in front of each chapter. He didn't even know they were Hebrew letters until we brought it up to him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Are you serious? Is that what that is?" I was like, "Oh gosh."
But it's an eye-opening thing, isn't it? When people do see it, I think it's really, really exciting.
It's just cool the way, because they don't number anything. They just put the letters by it. I just think to me, that's just interesting.
Yeah, and if people, I've often told people, if you want to learn the Hebrew alphabet, go to Psalm 119. There are a few other acrostic psalms, we say, but if you go to Psalm 119, even like the King James, most English Bibles will put that, as you said. Your pastor look, people see it all the time, but they don't know what those squiggly shapes are. What is that? But you can actually learn, and most of them have the name of the letter spelled out, and where you can read it. So you might pronounce it wrong, like if someone sees Aleph, Aleph or Alef, however it's spelled, someone may not know how to pronounce that. They may say Aleph or whatever. But look, you can learn the Hebrew alphabet that way. I think it's a great tool. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of our viewers may or may not know that. But you can learn the Hebrew alphabet that way. Just open up your English Bible or your Albanian Bible. I have Arta on. I'm curious if the Albanian Bible has, the same on Psalm 119. Does it have each letter of the alphabet? And Clody or Arta can let us know. But I'm curious, because it's how many Bibles out there are trying to show the reader in their language, does it have that Hebrew letter there? So that's a good question. We need to find out.
Yeah.
All right. What else?
That's all I got.
All right. Well, that was good. Good stuff. Well, I tell you what, let me see what I have in the YouTube chat. Make sure I don't miss any good stuff there. Looks like they have a conversation going on about the pseudo-Clementines. That's some good stuff. Some of you might be interested in that. And let me see. Okay, Tracy says the 10 of the Moses scroll have implications and interpretations in the blessings and curses in the same. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know about the Moses scroll, that's the book that I wrote. I think most of you know that. You're with us all the time. But the 10 words in the Moses scroll do have a corresponding blessing and curse, whereas Deuteronomy is lacking the blessings. And I know people are scrambling for their Bible to open up to Deuteronomy 28 and think they are going to prove me wrong. But Deuteronomy does not have the blessed bees. So anyway, this manuscript does. It's interesting. Eric says, I found the Clementine authors frequents Jeremiah, both homilies and the recognitions. These are two versions of the Clementine, the Clementine literature. Let's see. Anything else? Dolores says, linguistic question. Egyptian word for people of the Levantine was Rekhenu. Phonetically, Rechavites were people living in the Levant. And more about the Clementines. You can see that there. Okay. Tracy says Psalm 145 is one of them. The number is missing in the Masoretic text, but is included in the Qumran Psalms. All right. Charles Sutton. Let me unmute you here, brother. I think I got you.
Yeah, maybe so.
Hey, how you doing, man? You feeling better? You totally healed and healthy and
yeah, the doc says I'm coming along pretty good, so we'll see. I'm
good.
Doing my best. Doing my best, doing my workouts like they say do.
Good.
Anyway, if you've ever gone through that, you know how poorly my food tastes now. No salt.
Uh-oh.
But I was listening early concerning I think it was Clody talking about the difference between the 613 and the 10.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I use to simplify the way I think about it is the earliest claimed copy of the 10 that we have available to us has interpuncts to divide the words from each other. And if you were going to copy something off a stone, well, interpuncts come from stone. So just I don't know all the fancy words for etymology or anything, but if you were just going to trace for the earliest possible copy, then those interpuncts stand alone out of the Supero manuscript.
Yeah.
As possibly our earliest. That's just something that I use to make things a little simpler for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point, Charles. Whenever people look up, if you do a study, you read, even if you just look at the biblical account and you see Exodus 20, Deuteronomy 5, you're going to clearly see that they read differently. And then whenever people look at like if you look up on Wiki or maybe a study Bible that shows the different versions of the 10 words, the Lutheran, the Catholic, the Jewish, how you break it, all of those are guesses. And the reason they're guesses is because the text doesn't say word 1, and then give you word 2 and word 3. There are no Roman numerals in the Hebrew or the Greek or any ancient manuscript we have. What is unique about the manuscript that Shapira brought forward that so according to all reports, was discovered in 1865 in a cave east of the Jordan Rift, high up in the Wadi Mujib. The difference is that in that one, the 10 words are presented, as you said, each one begins on a new line, and each one ends with the phrase, Anoki Elohim Eloheka, I am God, your God. And then that's like a signature. Each one of those is signed off. We get something similar to that in Leviticus 19, where we have what is considered by many scholars to be another version of the 10. And in that version, God signs off on those, but by then the tetragrammaton is used. So it says, Ani Yehovah Elohim, or Eloheka. But God signs off on all of them except those that mention sacrifice, which is a whole nother question. Why is God's name not on the sacrifice commandments? So we've got some interesting things when we're dealing with the 10 words. And I think your point really that hits home is all of these ancient inscriptions on stone used interpuncts word separating dots between every word, and our manuscript actually follows that process. So I agree, Charles. It's some interesting things. What else you got, brother?
Oh, just glad to be here. Yeah, really glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here too, and you're in our prayers for quick and speedy and total recovery. And I saw a couple of points. People said stick with that no salt diet because your taste buds adjust. So
we'll see.
Yeah, I get it. I eat too much salt too. Maybe this is a hint that I should try to do the same. All right.
It's just water retention on my part. I can't retain that much water.
Gotcha.
Wrong kind of heart attack.
Gotcha.
Can't be having that kind of salt. Anyway, I'm following doctor's orders. That's what I'm doing. But the making it simple. Well, you know this already, but I just wanted to put the 10 Commandments on my doorpost. And you can't, so am I going with Exodus or am I going with Deuteronomy? And so that hit that wall months ago. So
one thing that's interesting, we have a tradition in a lot of people's homes. Many of you have what we call a mezuzah, because that's tied to the Hebrew word. You put this on your doorpost, and it's from Deuteronomy 6. And I think it's important that people, I like that. I mean, I have a mezuzah here as well, and we have them in our house. But, I have talked about this, and we've talked about it. Even at the conference when many of you were here, we talked about this idea of putting the 10 words of the Shapira manuscript on your doorpost, and some have done that since our meeting. But one thing that's interesting is that the 10 words, if you, on a standard door today, which, how much have doors changed? Probably not a whole lot since ancient times. But one thing that I will tell you is I saw this once. I was at a Sukkot, and a friend had his sukkah set up, and they had a door, an entrance into this big family sukkah. And they started on the right as you walk in, and they wrote in Hebrew the 10 words all the way around, all the way down. I wonder if that's not, I don't know that anciently they had the nice little rectangular box with a sheen on it, and you stick it on your door. What if they actually did? And so I think that is something that I think about a lot, and it might be kind of cool to do. You might have to get permission from other family members before you chisel their door frame up, but maybe you could start with writing it on paper and tacking it on. But anyway, just an idea.
I appreciate y'all.
All right, Charles. God bless you, brother.
God bless y'all. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Hey, my friend, Sue is back. How you doing, Sue?
I'm good, thank you. A friend of mine is just a tremendous artist, and he actually makes wooden frames with Hebrew or English, your choice, of the full 10 Commandments to be put around your door. So if anybody's interested, I can give you his name and email address. He just needs measurements, wants to know, do you want it in English? Do you want it in Hebrew? Do you want it in both? And which version?
Wow.
Yeah, and you can give him the Moses Scroll version if that's what you would want. And that's
now.
What
wait, just so I picture this. What a wooden frame is it? Like you give him the measurements of your door, and he just makes.
Right. It can either go. You could really order it for whatever will work for your door. Do you want it to go outside your door sill? Your door frame.
I got you.
Or do you want it to be laid on top of your door frame? Your choice. You let him know what you want. And they're absolutely beautiful.
That is interesting. Does he have a website?
No, he doesn't. He is the sweetest, dearest man. and he'll probably try and, do it for free or for his, some ridiculous price.
Right.
But it's just beautiful work. His name is Bob Parham, and he lives in Texas. And he's always busy making and doing stuff, so I can't tell you what kind of time frame
I got you.
he could deliver in, but they're just beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Good deal. That might be something to check into. That's interesting. So you've seen this as well, what I just described that my friend had on.
Oh, yeah.
Who knows? I mean, I don't know. Maybe this guy had his done by Bob. I don't know. It's been years.
It might have been Bob.
Yeah, that's right. Who knows? Cool. Good stuff. What else, my friend?
That's all from me, except I wish everybody a blessed Shabbat.
Well, thank you. I think that is very well received by the entire group. It is after 1:30 my time, and, I mean, I can do this all day. I know you can as well, but I would like for everyone to have a wonderful Shabbat, and stay tuned. We've got a lot of things in the pipe. We've got a lot of things that we're working on. This week is going to be, for the first time, I think in a long time. Now, I'm almost scared to say this, but I kind of think, I'm praying that September, things at least get back to a little bit more normalcy for us. We have been in a very busy time, unlike many that I've ever experienced in my life. It's hard to explain, and I don't want to come across as being a whiner, but it has been overwhelming almost. So I'm hoping that in September we'll have a little bit more breathing room and be able to produce more content. So with that said, I want to say Shabbat Shalom and keep your eyes peeled. We'll let you know as we've got more information out. And thank you very much for attending. Josh, I'm not going to cut you off. If you intended to raise your hand, I'll let you jump in there. Joshua, did you accidentally hit that, or you want to say something? I don't know where you even went. I don't even see you anymore. Let me see. I'm gonna be like an old preacher that says, I'm not gonna close this service. We're gonna play one more stanza, and if you feel, you come on up to the altar, Josh. All right. Okay. I'm gonna let you all go. We'll see you next time. God bless you. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Have a wonderful week. Many blessings. Goodbye.